On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 departed from Kuala Lumpur for Beijing with 239 people on board. For the passengers, it was just another flight that was supposed to reach its destination at 6:30 a.m. The plane never landed. Instead, the MH370 disappeared into thin air, leaving a trail of mystery and unanswered questions in its midst. Just what happened to those 239 passengers? Did the plane crash? Are the authorities any close to finding it? Let's find out. March 8, 2014, MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur at around 0041 MYT for Beijing, with 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board, including Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid. At first, everything seemed normal as the plane took off. According to reports, the Boeing 777 reached a cruising altitude of 10,700 meters at 1:01 a.m. But that's all the authorities know. After 6 minutes in the air, it was radio silence, the Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System, ACRS, that was used to transmit data about the aircraft's performance, sent its last transmission at 1:07 a.m. The last voice communication from the crew was around 1:19 a.m., and then at 1:21 a.m., the plane's transponder was switched off just as the plane entered Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea, a usual part of operations. But at 1:30 a.m., things started going wrong. Malaysian military and civilian radar sensed something was wrong and decided to track the plane. And much to the authorities' surprise, the plane had turned around and was flying southwest over the Malay Peninsula and then northwest over the Strait of Malacca. Confused, they tried to contact the pilots. But like the others, they also lost contact with the plane over the Andaman Sea at 2:22 a.m. Despite all communication being shut down, Inmarsat satellite data picked up hourly signals from Flight 370 and last detected the plane at 8:11 a.m. This was the last defense. Once the Inmarsat lost contact with the flight, Boeing 777 was no different from a ghost, cruising the skies for the authorities. This is when panic set in. The higher-ups were informed and search operations were launched. Investigators tried looking for clues on the South China Sea. However, it was later revealed that the flight had turned west after the transponder was switched off.
And then it vanishes again. That's the second vanishing. And they're like, oh, well, we better look. After it flew, it was flying actually quite fast. In fact, faster than planes usually travel. So whatever happened to this plane, it was now traveling faster than normal in this like weird, going off to the northwest.
So the search shifted from the South Sea to the Strait of Malacca and the Andaman Sea. But 7 days went by without the investigators finding anything. That's when Inmarsat's contact with the plane was disclosed to the public. Apparently, the signals sent by the plane weren't enough to locate the plane precisely, but they did help the search team in determining that the plane could possibly be at any of the two arcs. One from Java southward into the Indian Ocean southwest of Australia, and the other stretching northward across Asia from Vietnam to Turkmenistan. And so the search was expanded to the Indian Ocean southwest of Australia, on the southern arc in Southeast Asia, Western China, the Indian subcontinent, and Central Asia on the northern arc. But there was one problem. No nation along the northern arc had detected any unauthorized aircraft in their airspace. That made the southern route more likely, which is where the investigators concentrated their efforts. Families of the passengers counted seconds to receive some good news. Analysts worked day and night, coming with various possibilities, but it all proved to be for nothing. Because on March 24th, 2014, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak made a grim announcement. Inmarsat, together with UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch, had reanalyzed satellite data using a state-of-the-art Doppler method, and the results this time were conclusive. The flight had crashed in a part of the Indian Ocean 2,500 kilometers southwest of Australia. Given the amount of time that had passed in the crash side, the authorities strongly believed that the chances of anyone surviving were very low. Still, the bodies needed to be recovered, and so what followed was one of the most challenging search operations in aviation history. The terrain in the middle of the southern Indian Ocean, one of the most isolated places on Earth. Crews had to scan thousands of square kilometers of deep ocean. Ships deployed towed sonar array and underwater vehicles. Then, on April 6th, a breakthrough came, or so it seemed. An Australian Navy ship picked up some underwater sounds known as acoustic pings, about 2,000 kilometers northwest of Perth, Western Australia. Reports revealed that these sounds may have come from the plane's black box, a flight recorder that stores all flight data and cockpit conversations. For the first time, there was hope. Around the same time, the UK's AAIB analyzed Inmarsat's data and tracked 370's final signals. Search teams narrowed the zone. Submersibles were deployed. The world waited for confirmation of wreckage, but it never came. Weeks passed. No debris was found. So, where were these pings coming from if there was no debris? Well, that's when the investigators announced that the equipment might have had a faulty cable, which was picking up faulty pings. It was another dead end to the investigation. The authorities didn't make a breakthrough until a year later, the first piece of debris. On July 29, 2015, the right-wing flaperon was discovered on a beach on the French island of Reunion, around 3,700 kilometers west of the original location. After examination, it was confirmed to be from MH370. This was the first physical evidence of the aircraft. Over the next 18 months, 26 additional pieces of possible debris were recovered from various coastlines: Mozambique, Madagascar, Mauritius, South Africa, and Tanzania. Not all were confirmed, but several came from the aircraft's interior cabin, clear proof that the plane had broken apart. However, regardless of months of searching, investigators announced that it stated that the plane's controls had been manipulated, but they couldn't determine who would do so. Eventually, they stopped offering any conclusion about MH370, saying that everything depended on the plane's wreckage. But none of the debris answered the actual mystery. What happened to the plane? Multiple conspiracy theories surfaced, from mechanical errors to a remote-controlled crash, to even bizarre explanations involving an alien abduction or a Russian plot. Yet no one knew the truth. The authorities had their own version. In their eyes, the loss of the ASAR's transponder signals hinted towards some form of hijacking, but no one supported that theory, since no group had stepped forward to make any claims. What's more, in case of a hijacking, there was no point in flying the plane to the southern Indian Ocean. Some thought that it might have been a suicide attempt, after it was revealed that the signals had been switched off from inside the aircraft. Many thought that a crew member might have done it. However, not a lot of people supported this theory, as investigators didn't find any suspicious behavior prior to the flight while looking into pilot Zahari Ahmad Shah, or the first officer Farik Abdulhamid, or any of the cabin crew members. However, reports did reveal that a month prior to the plane's disappearance, pilot Shah had used his own private flight simulator to practice flying a route over the South Indian Ocean. That's the same area where MH370 reportedly went missing. This piece of information made people strongly believe that the crash might have been pre-planned by the pilot. Fast forward to 2020, former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott stated in a Sky News documentary, "My very clear understanding from the very top levels of the Malaysian government is that from very, very early on, they thought it was murder-suicide by the pilot."
This points to this so-called nightmare scenario, which is that this pilot deliberately planned to fly 239 people into the deepest reaches of the Indian Ocean, and that airplane would never be found. So the whole idea that there was some sort of mechanical failure, those theories have not held up. And now that we see that he was actually practicing to fly that airplane into the Indian Ocean, it's another piece of the puzzle that suggests that it was murder-suicide.
Meanwhile, a report from New York stated, New York has obtained a confidential document from the Malaysian police investigation into the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 that shows that the plane's captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, conducted a simulated flight deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean less than a month before the plane vanished under uncannily similar circumstances. The revelation, which Malaysia withheld from a lengthy public report on the investigation, is the strongest evidence yet that Zahari made off with the plane in a premeditated act of mass murder-suicide. Meanwhile, others thought that there might have been something wrong in the plane. The final report stated, "It is likely that the loss of communication prior to the diversion is due to the systems being manually turned off or power interrupted to them." As time passed by, new theories continued to surface. Some thought that the plane had been shot down by the government, but there was no evidence of any missiles fired. People were starting to give in to these theories, as the officials weren't able to tell what had actually happened. What else could they do? For the families of the 239 souls lost, even the wildest theories offered some form of explanation, some anchor in a storm of uncertainty. But more importantly, the incident sparked major aviation reforms, especially concerning aircraft tracking and data transmission protocols. Still, no one's giving up on the the MH370. The search for the plane has been reopened. A new study, backed by the latest sonar scans, has revealed the final resting place of MH370 after 11 years. Researchers identified an anomaly deep beneath the southern Indian Ocean, roughly 1,500 kilometers west of Perth, at coordinates 33.02 degrees south, 100.27 degrees east. Dr. Vincent Line, a former researcher at the University of Tasmania, used this data to propose a theory. He believed that the pilot crashed the plane into the ocean on purpose.
Landing the airplane on the water, and the idea behind that is that he wanted to minimize wreckage. He wanted to minimize the number of pieces that could be found, thus creating the mystery of never finding this airplane and never understanding why he did it or what he intended to do.
Line also believed that the pilot may have been aiming for an underwater trench to hide the wreckage, but something went wrong. The plane ended up hitting the side of a steep underwater slope instead, which took the lives of the 239 people on board. Still, as much as the study makes sense, it's yet to be verified. At the end of the day, despite international investigations, satellite data, debris discoveries, and a potential crash site, one thing remains unchanged. The truth is still out of reach. For the families left behind, the pain hasn't faded even years later. They still have the same questions. What do you think happened to the Boeing 777? Were the pilots to be blamed, or was it the work of Mother Nature? Let us know in the comment section below.